My hands were still shaking from Dad's phone call when I pulled into Magnolia's driveway, the engine ticking as it cooled in the Georgia heat. "You need to prove you love this family, Cordelia." His voice kept echoing in my head, that cold tone he used when he'd already made up his mind about something. At 52, I thought I was done with his manipulations, but here I was, summoned like a teenager who'd missed curfew. The house looked perfect, as always. Magnolia's pristine white columns and manicured azaleas, paid for by her husband's pharmaceutical sales job. Everything I'd never had. I'd worked 2 jobs through nursing school, saved every penny for 15 years to buy my little craftsman bungalow with the wraparound porch and the mortgage I'd finally paid off last month. $390,000 of pure freedom, and now they wanted me to sign it over to her. "It's just temporary," Mom had whispered during yesterday's ambush dinner, her eyes darting between Dad and Magnolia like she was watching a tennis match. "Just until after the wedding, sweetheart. You know how stressed she gets." But I'd seen that look in Dad's eyes, the same one he'd worn when he convinced me to co-sign his business loan that I'm still paying off. Nothing was ever temporary with him. The front door opened before I could knock, and there was Magnolia in her silk robe, her engagement ring catching the afternoon light like she was advertising it. "Oh, good, you came," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Behind her, I could see wedding gifts stacked on every surface, crystal and silver gleaming like a jewelry store display. "Daddy's in the study with the papers." My stomach clenched. Papers. He'd already drawn up papers. Dad didn't look up when I entered his study, just kept shuffling through a stack of legal documents like I was interrupting his important business. The room smelled of his expensive cigars and that cologne he wore to intimidate people. Old Spice mixed with arrogance. "Sit down, Cordelia," he said, finally raising his eyes. At 73, he still had that corporate executive presence that made grown men squirm in boardrooms. "I'm not signing anything," I said, remaining standing. My nursing scrubs felt suddenly shabby in this room full of leather-bound books he'd never read and awards from companies that had fired him years ago. His laugh was sharp, humorless. "You haven't even heard the reasoning yet. Always so stubborn, just like your mother's side." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Magnolia and Thorne need a place to live after the wedding. Their apartment lease is up, and with the down payment they made on their future home, they're cash poor until his promotion comes through. Then they can rent somewhere else." "With what money?" His voice rose slightly. "The wedding alone cost us $47,000. Your sister deserves to start her marriage in a proper home, not some cramped apartment." He slid the papers across his desk. "You'd get the house back in 18 months, 2 years maximum. We're not stealing from you, Cordelia. We're asking for family loyalty." I stared at the documents, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles went white. "And if I refuse?" The silence stretched between us like a held breath. Finally, he smiled. The same cold smile he'd worn when he'd chosen Magnolia's private school over my college fund. "Then I guess we'll know where your priorities really lie, won't we?" "No." The word came out stronger than I felt inside. "I'm not signing this, Dad. That house is my security, my retirement. I worked double shifts for 15 years to pay it off." His face darkened like storm clouds gathering. "Your security? What about family security? What about supporting your sister when she needs you most?" He stood up, towering over me the way he used to when I was 8 and had broken his favorite coffee mug. "Magnolia has always been there for this family. She married well. She's giving us grandchildren soon. She represents what we've built here." "And what have I built?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay calm. "Nothing that matters to you, apparently." Before he could answer, Magnolia swept into the room with Mom trailing behind her like a worried shadow. "Is everything okay?" I could hear voices. Her eyes immediately went to the unsigned papers on Dad's desk, and her perfectly glossed lips turned down in a pout that had gotten her everything she'd ever wanted since we were children. "Cordelia's being difficult," Dad said, not taking his eyes off me. "She doesn't seem to understand what family means." Mom's hands fluttered nervously at her throat. "Oh, sweetheart, surely you can see how important this is. It's just temporary, and Magnolia's wedding is in 2 days. Everything's already arranged. All the guests are coming." Her voice trailed off like she was afraid to finish the thought. "What does that have to do with my house?" I asked. But even as the words left my mouth, I could see it in their faces. That look of shared knowledge, like they were all part of a conversation I hadn't been invited to. Magnolia sat down delicately in the chair across from Dad's desk, smoothing her silk robe. "Thorne and I announced to everyone that we'd be living in your house after the honeymoon. His family, our friends, the wedding party. Everyone knows." She looked up at me with those wide blue eyes that had never heard the word no. "If we have to tell people we're moving into some tiny apartment instead, it'll be so embarrassing. What will they think about our family's stability?" The room felt like it was closing in around me. "You announced it without asking me first?" "Of course we told people," Dad said, like I was being unreasonable for expecting basic courtesy. "Thorne's parents were asking about their living arrangements, and we wanted to show them that our family takes care of each other. His father is a circuit court judge, Cordelia. These aren't people we can embarrass." The blood rushed to my face so fast I felt dizzy. "So you promised them my house to impress his family?" "We promised them our family would provide," Mom said quietly, wringing her hands. "The Ashworths have been so generous with the wedding expenses, helping with the catering and the flowers. They even paid for Magnolia's dress, that beautiful Vera Wang that cost $8,000. We couldn't let them think we weren't doing our part." Magnolia placed her hand over her still flat stomach in a gesture that was clearly practiced. "And there's something else we haven't told you yet." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Thorne and I are expecting. We found out last week, but we wanted to wait until after the wedding to announce it. A baby needs stability, Cordelia. A real home, not some cramped rental." The room spun around me. They'd planned this whole thing, the pregnancy announcement, the timing, the public pressure. I gripped the back of the chair to steady myself. "You're pregnant?" 8 weeks, she said, her eyes bright with tears that appeared on command. "We're so happy, but also terrified about money. Thorne's promotion won't come through until next year, and with a baby coming, we just need time to get on our feet. You understand, don't you? You've always been the responsible one." Dad leaned forward, sensing weakness. "Think about it, Cordelia. Your nephew or niece growing up in that beautiful house with the big backyard. Wouldn't that make you happy? Knowing you helped give them the best start in life?" I looked around the room at their expectant faces, Dad's calculating stare, Mom's anxious pleading, Magnolia's perfect vulnerability. They had it all figured out, every angle covered. The baby, the in-laws, the public announcement, the family loyalty card. I was supposed to fold like I always had, sign their papers and smile while they took the one thing I'd earned entirely on my own. "I need time to think," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The wedding is Saturday," Dad said coldly. "There is no time." I walked out of that study without signing anything, my legs shaking so badly I had to grip the stair railing to make it to my car. Behind me, I could hear Dad's voice rising, sharp words I couldn't quite make out, followed by Magnolia's theatrical sobbing. Mom appeared at the front door as I reached my Honda, her face pale and stricken. "Cordelia, please!" she called out, hurrying down the walkway in her house slippers. "You're tearing this family apart. Can't you see how much stress this is putting on your sister? In her condition?" I turned to face her, this woman who'd spent 30 years apologizing for Dad's behavior instead of stopping it. "Mom, that house is all I have. It's my retirement, my security. If I give it to them and something goes wrong—" "Nothing will go wrong," she interrupted, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "They're good people, responsible people. Thorne has a steady job and his family has money. They're not like—" She trailed off, but I knew what she wasn't saying. "They're not like you. Not like the daughter who never married well, never had children, never gave them anything to brag about at the country club." That night, my phone rang constantly. Magnolia, crying about stress and the baby. Dad, cold and furious, reminding me of every sacrifice they'd made for me growing up, every piano lesson and summer camp they'd somehow afforded. Extended family members I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly concerned about family unity and supporting Magnolia during this difficult time. The last call came at 11 p.m. Thorne himself, his voice smooth and reasonable, like he was closing a business deal. "Cordelia, I understand your concerns, and I respect them, but I want you to know that this isn't just about us. My family is watching how this situation resolves itself. They're very traditional, very focused on family values. If Magnolia's own sister won't support her during her pregnancy—" He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "Well, it would be unfortunate if that affected how they view their future relationship with her." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen in my house, and realized they weren't just asking for my home. They were asking for my surrender, complete and total capitulation to the idea that my life, my work, my sacrifices didn't matter as much as Magnolia's comfort. Saturday morning, I put on my navy blue dress and drove to the wedding. The Magnolia Grove Country Club looked like something from a magazine, white roses and gold ribbons everywhere, crystal chandeliers sparkling over tables set with china that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I found my assigned seat at table 7, far from the family table, but close enough to see Dad's thunderous expression when he spotted me. He'd clearly expected me to stay home in shame. Magnolia looked radiant in her Vera Wang gown, all silk and pearls and practiced smiles as she greeted guests with Thorne at her side. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, polished, with that easy confidence that came from never having to worry about money. His parents held court at the head table, Judge Ashworth in his expensive suit, his wife dripping diamonds like she'd robbed Tiffany's. During the cocktail hour, the whispers started. I caught fragments of conversations. Living arrangement. Family house. So generous. And realized that half the guests already knew about the supposed deal. Dad had made sure of that, turning my private business into public expectation. "Cordelia!" The voice belonged to my cousin Janet, who I hadn't seen since last Christmas. She appeared at my elbow with a gin and tonic and entirely too much enthusiasm. "I heard about you letting Magnolia and Thorne use your gorgeous house. How wonderfully generous." I told my herald, I said, "That's what real family does for each other." My smile felt like broken glass. "Actually, that hasn't been decided yet." Janet's face went blank with confusion. "But Judge Ashworth was just telling everyone about the lovely arrangement, how blessed Thorne is to have such a supportive sister-in-law." She trailed off as she saw my expression. Oh dear." The dinner was torture. Every course felt like swallowing sand while conversations died around me, and people shot curious glances in my direction. I could see Dad getting redder by the minute, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Mom kept looking between us like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. During the toasts, Judge Ashworth stood up with his champagne glass raised high. "To Thorne and Magnolia," he began, his voice carrying across the silent room, "and to the generous family support that will help them start their new life together in such a beautiful home." His eyes found mine across the room, expectant and smug. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is the security of family. The applause was thunderous. Every eye in the room turned to me, waiting for my gracious acknowledgement. my humble smile, my acceptance of this public coronation as the family saint. Instead, I stood up and walked toward the exit. I made it halfway across the reception hall before Dad's voice boomed behind me. "Cordelia! Get back here right now!" The conversations around us died like someone had flipped a switch. 200 guests turned to stare as my 73-year-old father stormed after me, his face purple with rage. "Dad, please," I whispered, acutely aware of every eye in the room. "Let's not do this here." "You selfish, ungrateful." His voice carried across the entire ballroom. "After everything this family has done for you, you're going to humiliate us in front of everyone." Judge Ashworth was watching from the head table, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. Magnolia had gone pale, her bouquet trembling in her hands as she grabbed Thorne's arm. The wedding photographer was still snapping pictures, capturing every moment of what was supposed to be a perfect day. "I'm not humiliating anyone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm just not giving away my house." "That house should have been your sister's from the beginning." Dad's spit hit my face as he leaned closer. "She's the one who married well. She's the one giving us grandchildren. What have you ever contributed to this family besides disappointment?" The words hit like physical blows. Around us, guests shifted uncomfortably, some pulling out their phones to record the spectacle. I could see Mom halfway across the room, frozen in horror, while Magnolia started crying those perfect tears that had gotten her everything she'd ever wanted. "That's enough." My voice came out stronger than I felt. "I've contributed plenty. I paid for your business loan when the bank wouldn't. I covered Mom's medical bills when your insurance wouldn't. I've been the family ATM for 20 years, and now you want my house too?" Dad's face went from purple to crimson. He grabbed the heavy crystal centerpiece from the nearest table, a twisted sculpture of metal and glass that must have weighed 10 pounds, and before I could react, he swung it at my head. The impact sent me stumbling sideways, my temple exploding with pain as warm blood trickled down my cheek. Gasps echoed through the ballroom, followed by the crash of overturned chairs as people jumped to their feet. That's when Thorne stood up from the head table, his face white as his wedding shirt. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Just stop! She doesn't have to give us anything!" The ballroom fell dead silent except for the sound of my blood dripping onto the white tablecloth. Thorne walked slowly toward us, his hands shaking, while Magnolia stared at him in horror. "Thorne, what are you doing?" she whispered, but he didn't look at her. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "I can't watch you people destroy your own daughter." He turned to face the crowd of stunned guests, many of them still holding their phones, recording every word. "There is no house arrangement. There never was supposed to be one, and there's no baby." Magnolia's gasp was audible from across the room. "Thorne, no! She's not pregnant," he continued, his voice getting stronger. "She lied about that to pressure Cordelia into giving up her house. We've been trying for months, but there's no baby. And the reason we need that house so badly, it's because I've been stealing from my father's law firm for 2 years to pay off gambling debts." Judge Ashworth shot to his feet, his face draining of color. "What did you just say?" $67,000, Thorne said, looking directly at his father. "From the client trust fund. I've been covering it up, moving money around, but the audit is next month and they're going to find everything." His voice cracked. "I thought if we had Cordelia's house, we could sell it quietly, and I could put the money back before anyone noticed." The silence was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears as I pressed a napkin to my bleeding temple. Around us, 200 wedding guests sat frozen, their champagne glasses forgotten, their phones capturing the complete destruction of what was supposed to be the social event of the season. Magnolia's perfect composure finally cracked. "You said we were just borrowing it!" she screamed at Thorne. "You said your promotion would solve everything! You never told me you were stealing!" "Because I knew you'd leave me," he shot back. "Just like you're going to leave me now that everyone knows the truth." Dad stood there with the bloody centerpiece still in his hands, looking around the room at the faces staring back at him. Judge Ashworth's fury, his wife's disgust, the social elite of our small Georgia town witnessing his complete loss of control. The man who had terrorized our family with his demands for respect and loyalty had just assaulted his own daughter in front of everyone who mattered in his world. Someone called 911. I could hear sirens in the distance. The paramedics arrived first, followed closely by 2 police officers who took one look at the blood on my face and the crystal centerpiece in Dad's hands and immediately separated us. Judge Ashworth was shouting at Thorne about the stolen money while his wife sat in stunned silence, her diamonds glittering under the chandeliers like tears. The wedding guests had mostly fled, leaving behind half-eaten cake and abandoned champagne flutes, the debris of a celebration that had turned into a public execution. "Ma'am, we need to get you to the hospital," the paramedic said, examining the gash on my temple. "This is going to need stitches." But I couldn't stop staring at my family's complete collapse happening 20 feet away. Magnolia had torn off her veil and was screaming at Thorne through her tears. $67,000? You risked everything for gambling? Our marriage, my family, my sister's house? Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time in 30 years, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes when she looked at me. Dad was being read his rights, the handcuffs looking surreal against his expensive tuxedo. "This is all your fault," he snarled at me as they led him past my stretcher. "If you just signed the papers like you were supposed to, none of this would have happened." Even bleeding and surrounded by chaos, he still couldn't see it. Still couldn't understand that his decades of manipulation and control had finally caught up with him. Mom appeared at my side, her face streaked with mascara and shame. "Cordelia, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him years ago. I should have protected you." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Will you ever forgive me?" I looked at this woman who had enabled his behavior for 30 years, who had prioritized peace over protection, and felt something break loose in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. She had been trapped too, in her own way. "We'll see," I told her, and meant it. Judge Ashworth stormed past us, his face grim with the knowledge that his son's crimes would destroy his own reputation. The social elite who had fawned over the Ashworth-Magnolia union just hours before now scattered like leaves, already planning how to distance themselves from the scandal. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I caught sight of my reflection in the window, bloody but unbroken, finally free from the weight of their expectations and demands. My house was still mine. My life was still mine. And for the first time in decades, I didn't owe anyone anything. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my front porch, in my house that no one will ever take from me, watching the sunrise over the garden I planted with my own hands. The stitches healed without a scar, but the healing inside took longer. Dad got 18 months for assault, reduced because of his age and previously clean record, though everyone in town knows the truth now. The country club dropped his membership the day after the wedding video went viral on social media. Thorne got 3 years for embezzlement. Judge Ashworth resigned in disgrace and moved to Florida, unable to face the lawyers and colleagues who had watched his son confess to stealing from their trust funds. The marriage was annulled before Thorne even went to trial. Apparently Magnolia's love had limits after all. She moved back in with Mom, who sold the big house and bought a small condo across town. Magnolia works at a department store now, learning what it feels like to earn minimum wage and pay her own bills. She called me last month, crying and apologetic, begging for another chance at being sisters. I told her the same thing I told Mom. We'll see. The funny thing is, I'm not angry anymore. That burning rage that lived in my chest for so many years just disappeared. When you stop trying to earn love from people who are incapable of giving it, when you stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm, you discover something amazing: peace. I kept my job at the hospital, but I work fewer double shifts now. I travel sometimes. Last month, I went to Savannah and stayed in a bed and breakfast, eating shrimp and grits on a balcony overlooking the river. Nobody asked me for money or favors or pieces of my soul. Nobody demanded that I prove my worth through sacrifice. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, brings me vegetables from her garden, and I help her with her computer when it acts up. Real friendship, built on mutual respect instead of manipulation and guilt. It's a revelation. The house feels different now, too. Lighter somehow, like it's finally mine in every sense of the word. I painted the kitchen yellow, bought furniture that I actually like instead of the hand-me-downs I'd always accepted. Small changes, but they matter. Sometimes people ask if I regret not giving in, if I wish I'd just signed those papers to keep the peace. But peace built on surrender isn't peace at all. It's just delayed devastation. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it. Now tell me, what would you do if you were in my place? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and comment where you're watching from.